This is Julie from bigasanas.com. Today, I'd like to talk about easy pose, or Sukhasana, or easy seat. Now, this is something that we often hear at the beginning of class, or maybe the end of class after Shavasana. We're told by the teacher something that sounds a lot like, come to an easy seat at the front of your mat. Well, here's the deal. Easy is going to be different for everyone. And sometimes what is usually accepted as doing Sukhasana the right way isn't so easy for a variety of reasons. So I'm going to start by showing you what we're taught is Sukhasana. It's basically crisscross applesauce, or what you would hear that kindergarten teacher saying to round up the kids for story time. It is essentially sitting cross-legged on the floor. Well, so when you do that, your sit bones are making contact with the floor in the back, and in the front, your points of contact are the sides of your feet, or the edges of your feet. And then your legs are open at the hips, and your knees, or maybe shins, are resting on top of your feet, which are on the ground. So really your 3 points of contact are the two sides of your feet and your sit bones or your bottom. This isn't so easy for a lot of people. You've probably seen it in class. People who have their knees way up here, maybe their feet are kind of way out in front of them, and they sometimes are actually like physically holding onto their feet to keep, or their legs to keep them up. Or you can tell they're gripping in their muscles to try to avoid that resistance point where they've reached that place where their hips are saying, you know, I'm not opening up anymore, F you. And they look uncomfortable, right? Because you can tell they're gripping. They're either physically, like there's an outward physical manifestation of the gripping, literally, or they just got that look on their face. Like they are holding on for dear life muscularly. Maybe their legs start to shake a little. They don't look comfortable. And you should always be comfortable in a pose that's actually called easy pose, because that's what Sukhasana means. So if you're not comfortable in easy pose, there's a problem. Now, I'm not comfortable in that particular pose because I injured myself earlier this year. And as a result of some surgery, the outside of this foot is really sensitive, and there's some scar tissue, and I've lost some flexibility here. So having it touching the hard floor is pretty uncomfortable. And then on top of that, when you put the leg over it and the weight of the leg is pressing down and pushing it into the floor, it's even more uncomfortable. So I almost never sit like that because it hurts and I don't want to be uncomfortable. I definitely don't want to be uncomfortable when I'm told to find a comfortable seat. So I usually sit in this sort of pseudo half lotus. I just pull this leg up on top of the other leg, and I let my foot rest in between my shin and my thigh, which keeps, there's none of that hard pressure of a hard floor happening there, so there's no pain. But I do have the good fortune of having decently open hips and also having spent a lifetime sitting on floors. I don't know why, I just like doing it. So not everyone can sit this way either. There are a couple of things you can do if you're finding yourself in that cross-legged position and your legs are kind of up. Instead of gripping on, instead of holding, get yourself a block. Get actually 2 blocks. And you can put them underneath your knees. And what happens then is that you can allow your leg to just rest into that block. Now you're not having to hold it up with the muscles anymore, and the block is doing that work for you. So you actually can find some ease here. Alternatively, what might work is sitting on the block. So instead of sitting on the floor and using the block to prop up your knees, you could also put the block underneath you, sit on the block, and what that does is it opens the angle of the hip this way, right? You still have to open out with the hips, but instead of opening out and having them closed, your bum is raised up so that angle can be more open through here. And that's actually pretty comfortable for a lot of people. If you don't need as much height as the block, but you do need a little opening through here, you can also use a blanket. So these are pretty common. If you're at home, really any sturdy blanket will do. This is the kind of blanket you would typically find in a yoga studio. And you just want to fold it to get the amount of thickness in there that you need. And anyone who went through yoga teacher training with me can tell you that I'm very particular about how the blankets get folded. But whatever, it's a personal quirk. I'm also really particular about how lids and sleeves go on to-go coffee cups. So what you want to do then is, with your folded blanket, you just come to a seat on your blanket and then move yourself forward so that what's making contact with the blanket is actually your sit bones. And then that will create a little bit of space here. Obviously much less than the block. You can see the difference in height, right? Like here's where the blanket stops, here's where the block stops. But if you don't need this much space, but you find you still need a little bit of space, and maybe you just like a little cushion underneath your sit bones, this is a really great option. Now, your other option, if none of these work for you, you've tried the blocks, you've tried the blanket, your hips aren't having any of it, you can also sit up on your knees in Virasana or Hero's pose. This is obviously only if your knees can tolerate having that kind of weight or pressure on them. So in this case, all you're gonna do is come up and then sit back on your heels. So what's happening here is there's a fair amount of compression happening, you know, like through your knee, the tops of your feet are getting pressed into the floor. But if you don't have issues there, this can be much more comfortable than trying to sit on your bum. And there are people, you know, I know people who can sit this way all day long and they don't have any issues. I'm not one of them. For me, this is kind of uncomfortable. I can do it for a little while, but I definitely wouldn't want to do it for, say, as long as a couple of minutes, which is what a lot of teachers want to do at the beginning of class, to do some breathing before getting into moving and stretching the body. So if I find myself in a situation where I need to be on my knees or I just want to be for some strange reason, I will almost always get a block and put it back between my heels and sit back on it so that my sit bones are on the block and my knees are on the floor still. And what's happening here is, you might have to fidget a little to find the right spot for it. I'm not putting weight or extra weight into my heels, into my calves, not compressing down on that knee. What's happening is my weight's going down through my sit bones, through the block, through the floor, instead of through my sit bones, through my heels, through the floor. So the angle is a little less here, it's not as kind of squished down, and it's just more comfortable. So I could sit like this for quite a while with no complaints. I'm going to show you that from the side as well. So you just place that block between your heels and then you sit back on it and you're looking for the spot where it's underneath your sit bones. And so now you can see I'm not on my heels. I can run my fingers and my hand right through that space between my bum and my heel. And then this isn't as squished down as it would be if I were down on my heels, or if my knees were together and I were down on my heels. See? So, any of those variations are fine, even if nobody else in the room is doing them. And that's sort of the beauty of yoga, right? Like, you don't have to look like every other person in the room. You're looking for what feels good inside of your body. You're looking for what allows you to become grounded and centered, because that's the point of this pose. This pose is to allow us to find the place where we are connected to the ground, we are inside of our body, there's no muscular effort happening here. We're allowing our skeleton to do the work of holding us up. We're just looking for the right alignment to get us there, which lets us relax into breathing or relax into meditation. To find that place inside of us where there's some calm, some equanimity. So remember, you're looking for your pose that feels good in your body and that allows you to start to explore the movement that feels right for you on any given day. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked it.